So just a few words about this melody. So it's usually commonly referred to as Tzam Anafshi, which is the first two lines of this refrain. Tzam Anafshi, my soul is thirsty, and it's a piyut, which means that it's not part of the formal liturgy. Piyut is often translated as a poetry or folk song, and it's from the 12th century, written by Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra. And it's interesting just how much in the last, especially the last 6 months since the war started, I realized like how much history is relevant and important, to know where I'm coming from and where my people is coming from. And some of these piyutim came to be because especially in the Middle Ages, Jewish liturgy was Jewel, I saw you make a gesture. Can you not hear me? Am I low? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Jewish liturgy was illegal. There were times during the Caliphate time, under the Muslim rule, that it was illegal to sing to pray in synagogues. So there was a movement to create these poems, piyutim, which was another way to pray without doing the formal liturgy, and that was legal. So just again, to just have a bit of a breath of where we were, where we are today, and how these tools that we have also just say so much about our people. and what they endured, what we endured. And now it's a song that is often sung on Suda Shlishit, on Shabbat, or Shmini Atzeret, which is actually just before Simchat Torah, on the end of Sukkot. So that's a song for that time. Yeah, there's something about the stillness. I don't know if any of you, picked up on the encouragement to keep your eyes a little open, because that does something. Everything is okay. You can sit with the eyes closed or not, but there's something when there's a little bit of eye, when those gates remain a little open, and we're really bearing witness to each other in this space, literally, like taking in each other's faces. I experienced a tremendous sense of intimacy that is enhanced. And usually if I have my eyes closed, it surprises me when I open my eyes and I see everyone's faces and I feel that intimacy. So it's the same, but when the eyes are open throughout the whole time, I know for myself, and I know from so many others, like how much we just want to be seen, right? Just to be beheld in somebody's gaze. We don't need to hear any wise words. We don't need to hear any beatitudes. Just be seen. Yeah. It was Reb Nachman, a Hasidic teacher from the mid of the 18th century, said, it's better to be quiet than to talk. And then he said, it's better to sing than to be quiet. So he has that extra step, right? Like over the Zen master. The Zen master will just, say, just sit. And he said, well, when you fly, sing, so that's the question, is like, what is, well, actually, it kind of speaks about these two forms of chant practice that I spoke of last time. That there's melodies that allow us to fly, and there's melodies that come out as we fly. And when I say fly, I don't necessarily mean like anything too, woo-woo or out there. It's being present. Really just being present. All right, so happy to take any more sharings. We'll have more opportunities, and also to turn to our text. And I realize, because I was speaking with someone about studying Talmud, and I realized that there's a lot of, like, I know I felt when I started to study the Talmud, like I felt like, oh, this, like, what is this? It's like, this is like this is for like scholars, people who are learned. Who am I to talk about this? And I want to name this because this is part of the ancestral healing that I feel that I'm doing, and I believe that we're all doing it together when we engage with these stories and these texts and the feelings that come up as we engage with them. I'm enjoying also, as I'm preparing to these classes, I'm also learning, and it reminded me, that the Talmud, and in a way we'll talk about it because today we're going to talk about Rabban Gamliel, who is one of the mythic figures in the Talmud, but also controversial. But it also reminded me how much the Talmud itself was controversial, because remember that it's basically, these teachings have been put into writing only on the 3rd century or 5th century, depends whether in Babylonia or in Palestine. That it's even said that Paul the apostle used to study at the feet of Rabban Gamliel. So we're talking about a time where there's so much abundance possibly of spiritual learning and culture. And part of the break that Christianity had with Judaism and the followers of Jesus, and later on, you know, throughout the Middle Ages and the Inquisition, part of the criticism that Jews met from specifically the Christian Inquisition and before that was about the Talmud, because even the Christians themselves followed the Torah, right? The five books of Moses, of Moshe. It was the codification of the later rabbis that they said, this is like you're like adding something over something that is already complete. And in a way, when you have the Ramban, Nachmanides, anyway, is a 12th century rabbi who debated with an inquisitor about the validity of Judaism. They debated the validity of the Talmud. So just know just how much this is blended and woven into the fabric of anti-Semitism today, of the challenges of who are we, right? We think that Judaism is something that is monolithic. You know, I was just thinking about Purim. It's like you have to, right? It's like you have to take Judaism as a whole and to really recognize that there's been so much along the way and so much has changed along the way. And our ancestors have wrestled with all of it throughout. And Rabban Gamliel is that we'll read about today was in one of those inflection points because he was in the generation that moved like right after the fall of the Second Temple. And in a way, there's a movement of the guard, of the old guard. He was the his grandfather was the first Gamliel, which is also a very well-known rabbi, and his grandfather was Rabbi Hillel, and you probably heard of Hillel and Shammai, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Those are two mythic houses of rabbinic teachings in the time of the Second Temple. Hillel, the house of Hillel, is known to be more inclusive and universal and world-facing. And Shammai, Beit Shammai, the house of Shammai, is known to be a little bit more stricter and more rigorous. And Gamliel is a descendant of Beit Hillel. This is an inflection point right after the temple was destroyed. And there's these groups of rabbis who were like scattering of how to maintain a sense of cohesion among the people. So we will see, and it will be expressed a little bit in the story that we'll read today about that. And there's a lot of additional politics around. So we'll be reading it from the pshat, from the literal point of view, and then we'll look a little bit into the other layers of the content of what it brings for us today. And then also that Nondual aspect of like, how is this a story that describes our minds, possibly? So I'm going to share my screen. I'm just curious. No, I don't put anybody on the spot. I'm curious. Folks had a chance to like read through it a little bit, just kind of like glance through it. Okay, Rebecca, great. Okay, so some didn't, some did. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Any question before I kind of, Marcia? Yeah. Somebody? No. Okay. So, okay. There's a lot of interesting context to this, but I'll share with you the context after we read it. So we already have a bit of internal access to it. So I'm with you for a moment. I'm just taking a moment looking at the text itself. I invite you to take a breath and to close your eyes for a moment and to appreciate that we're engaging with a very old text. Words, sounds, ideas, aspirations of our ancestors that are 2,000 years old. And we've received them in our hands today. So as my student mind is eager to learn, and I want to acknowledge that this is a precious moment of reconnecting with this ancestral text. I want to say thank you for mystery, for bringing me and all of us together. To study, to learn, to be reminded, to wonder. So we can continue on our day and week and year with a life that is dedicated towards awareness and love in a world that so dearly needs it right now. And by doing this, we're doing a mitzvah. We're studying. And by mitzvah, it's not a commandment, but it's a form of coming closer. That's what a mitzvah is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, great mystery, that has called us and sanctified us in studying the Torah. שקדשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. Amen. Okay. So I think for the starters, because I'm also seeing the time, because in a way this case has two big scenes, and we'll start with the first scene and see how far we go, possibly if we get to the second one. So I'm going to read the Hebrew, and then I'll ask someone if they want to read the English. And again, like I said last time, I find it important to repeat the Hebrew. And even if the words are not familiar to you, just let them shower you. Just notice what it feels like to have these really old words that has been passed on and protected for over 2,000 years. Feel. דמות צורות לבנות היו לו לרבן גמליאל, בטבלה ובכותל בעלייתו, שבהן מראה את ההדיוטות ואומר, החזה ראית או חזה? מעשה שבאו שניים ואמרו, ראינוהו שחרית במזרח וערבית במערב. אמר רבי יוחנן בן נורי, עדי שקר הם. כשבאו ליבנה, קיבלן רבן גמליאל. ועוד באו שניים ואמרו, ראינוהו בזמנו, ובליל עיבורו לא נראה. וקיבלן רבן גמליאל. אמר רבי דוסה בן הרקינס, עדי שקר הם. היאך מעידין על האישה שילדה, ולמחר קרסה בין שיניה. אמר לו רבי יהושע, רואה אני את דבריך.
How do we say his name?
Gamliel.
Gamliel had a diagram of the different forms of the moon drawn on a tablet that hung on the wall of his attic. which he would show to the laymen who came to testify about the new moon, but were unable to describe adequately what they had seen. And he would say to them, "Did you see a form like this or like this?" There was an incident in which two witnesses came to testify about the new moon, and they said, "We saw the waning moon in the morning in the east. And that same day, we saw the new moon in the evening in the west." Rabbi Yohanan ben Nori said, "They are false witnesses, as it is impossible to see the new moon so soon after the last sighting of the waning moon. However, when they arrived in Yavni, Rabban Gamliel accepted them as witnesses without concern." And there was another incident in which two witnesses came and said, "We saw the new moon at its anticipated time, i.e., on the night of the 13th day of the previous month. However, on the following night, i.e., the start of the 31st, which is often the determinant of a full 30-day month, it was not seen. And nevertheless, Rabban Gamliel accepted their testimony and established the new moon on the 13th day. Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas disagreed and said, "They are false witnesses. How can witnesses testify that a woman gave birth and the next day her belly is between her teeth?" i.e., she is obviously still pregnant. If the new moon was already visible at its anticipated time, how could it not be seen a day later? Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, "I see the logic of your statement. The new moon must be established a day later."
How can our ancestors teach us of how to live today and how to serve others? So yeah, I'll probably zigzag a little bit. What Michael said about the shapes of the moon. So there's another section in the Talmud that I think it's a little later on, where actually Rabban Gamliel gets flack over having those images in his attic, because in Exodus, when God says "Lo tasu dmut li," or don't make an image of me, there are other interpretations that say that includes the celestial beings. So Rabban Gamliel did a big no by having images. But because he was Rabban Gamliel, he got away with it. So you already see a little bit in the story that there's a little bit of political strife there, right? There's Rabbi Yoshua, who is much more of a, like Jerry said, like there's a lot at stake here. This is Rosh Chodesh is one thing, but the entire month, the entire year, and we're talking about Rosh Hashana. This comes from Mishnah Rosh Hashana, where they're orienting towards the holiest day of the year, which is Yom Kippur. And this is what happens in the next section, and I'll just touch on it briefly, where because there's this disagreement between, when is the new year, Rabbi Yoshua is saying, no, it has to be on a certain day. The other witnesses were obviously wrong. I do not accept Rabban Gamliel's judgment. We spoke about judgment earlier and how it feels. in our bodies to be judged. So here we have another court drama, right? Another question of judgment. So Rabban Gamliel, because he was still the chief of the Sanhedrin, he was the chief of the main court in Yavne. He sent a message to Rabbi Yoshua that if he thinks that the new moon is in a different day, he challenged him to come meet him on the day that he thought would be Yom Kippur, with his money and everything that you're not supposed to do on Yom Kippur. And Rabban Yoshua was conflicted, and he ended up doing that. He ended up going because he wanted to appease his rabbi. And Rabban Gamliel accepted him with an open arms and said, "You are my student and you are my teacher." So we're seeing here this old Rabbi Gamliel, and he is, in a way, seems to be very lenient about things that are very, very important. It's kind of like the opposite of the judges that we met with Chuma, right? Rava from last week, and he's getting flack over it. And actually, he was disqualified later on by Rabbi Yoshua and others from his role because he was he didn't have the political stamina that they needed in order to make sure that this tradition is passed on into the next generation in a formalized way, right? Which is valid, right? You got to know to cross the street when there's a green light, and you can't have the street light turn on you in the middle of your crossing. So there is validity in it, right? So this is not a either or. And I think here when I was contemplating this, I was thinking about, what Susan was asking last time about the paradox. Here we have a paradox. And we have sets of witnesses coming in saying different truths. It's like, Jerry's clients having different kind of truths to them. And what is a person like Gamliel, what can he do to keep both the ship go in the same direction and also make sure that people are alive and well and thriving on the ship, that it's not a ghost ship, right? So there's a shalom bayit, there's a peace on the ship. There's a Zen saying from Dogen Zenji that says that even paper cakes satisfy hunger. I'm just like, what? How can that be? From that way of imagining that there is, and this is where I'm shifting the language and depersonifying this from the language of people and the language of our ancestors, because all of these are relevant and important different layers for us to enjoy, really, and kind of like learn about it and learn from. The third layer that I wanted to bring in is in terms of how is this could be applicable to beholding one's mind. And what is it? How is, when we sit in our silence and meditating, and we assume this role of Gamliel, this mind that knows that there's a tachlis world that needs to do things and engage with people, and there's a green light at a certain time and a red light at a certain time, and those cannot be mixed because lives will be taken. And at the same time, to have this responsible, spacious mind where witnesses come and they are sure of their truth. And actually, they always come in pairs. One is how do you say, corroborates the other. And then there's another pair that comes in and he approves them, and he proves this pair and he proves that pair. And our judging mind, just like in Huma's case last week, our judging mind knows better than anyone. And if you've not seen it in a certain way, then you're canceled, right? So in a way, with Rabban Gamliel, and I imagining sitting with him in his attic, in every moment of perception where a witness comes and say, I'm feeling so-and-so, I'm angry about such and such, I just read the news about so-and-so. Those are the witnesses. And the inner Rabban Gamliel is accepting them, right? And it's like, as I said earlier, we're not pushing them away, we're not dismissing them, we're inviting them to be with us because the ship has to be alive. I know then that when I will need to make a decision, when I will step out of my meditation, I trust that the totality, like Michael said, like will manifest. And I loved that he was showing them those different forms, right? Because forms are also the forms of what awareness perceives in our minds, whether there are forms of joy and forms of anger, of grief. What is it like to read the news today about, Israel and the West Bank and Gaza, and be torn between being Rabbi Yoshua that needs to make sure that things operate, and also to be Rabban Gamliel that knows that there's a bigger horizon, and that bigger horizon calls for a certain acceptance that is so radical. It's so radical that we may even miss Yom Kippur. Oh, we may do it on the wrong day. So he's orienting toward a vaster horizon. And what I love about this is that it also gives a bit of permission. I know something that I was kind of wrestling with in Purim, just a couple of days ago, because I was just seeing so much of what's happening, how Purim was celebrated in different parts in Israel that I couldn't stand. And I did not practice Purim in the conventional way of, throwing a play and dressing up and all of that stuff. So there's a freedom even from the observance of the religious calendar. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the entirety of the Jewish world practicing this kind of freedom of saying, you know what, we're going to do it a little differently this time. Oh, we're going to do it on another day. So, I'm not necessarily encouraging this or that, but again, Gamliel is provoking a really radical sense of both playfulness but freedom with what we think is a monolithic tradition that we think we're supposed to be in a certain way. And in ways is inviting us to really wonder, what is it like to be both ancestrally responsible today? My karma is nearly 99%, 9% Ashkenazi Jew. There's no ounce of me that is not Jewish, right? I have all of these stories in the cells of my body. Like Marcia said, I hear these melodies and I'm starting to getting these shpilkes. And at the same time, this moment is so radically emergent and is so radically free. And Rabban Gamliel is in a way inviting us to ride that edge between tradition and acknowledgement of ancestral transmission, and also realizing all of this is manifesting anew every moment. It's part of the prayer in Shacharit, every moment, every day is creation. And when I say creation, I don't mean the Big Bang and the evolution. I'm talking about the emergence of awareness. Now too, this emergence is so radical and so free, and it carries with it its ancestral backpack. Yeah, I love that you brought that Zen koan. It was on my list. Just the time was so short. I love that you brought it up. Again, like I said, there's all of these different levels, the ancestral, the non-dual. In a way, these are just tasters, right? Like we're all going to leave this and stay with what stays with us. So if the ancestral didn't click for you, but the one with the pointing up to the moon did, wonderful. I love that. I'll just briefly say that there's this koan of the moon in Zen is a representative of awareness, of enlightenment. And there's a saying to not confuse the finger that points to the moon itself. So here we have Gamliel as a Zen teacher, possibly testing a student, telling them, show me your insight. This is when I practiced with my Zen teacher. I had to go and I had to show him the moon, not point at it. And he's so grandfatherly, says, yes, of course. He just approves everyone. Is he doing them a disservice? Maybe he's saying that even in them not seeing the moon, them not having a direct experience with complete, clear awareness, they are perfect too. Right? We all want to be the perfect Buddha, but what along the way? Are we good? Are we worthwhile? So there's so many layers here, and I love, Susan, that you brought it in, because if now we read this with the Levana, the moon, as the standing for enlightenment, how could Gamliel not accept all of them? Let's take a breath for a moment and simply receive the sound. Mekudash, Mekudash, Mekudash. These are the words that Rabban Gamliel would use to approve a witness. Mekudash, Mekudash, Mekudash. So let's just appreciate our time together, the great, great privilege and blessing of learning together, being in silence together, being in chanting together, and then funneling all of this through that mouthpiece that Jerry blew through, and that horn does not disprove any sound. So may this spaciousness and this vulnerable heart, as well as practical, protective, responsible awareness, may we take this into our day and into our week, and allow your mind to be surprised by this sugya. Sugya is a case in the Talmud, so allow your mind to be surprised by it throughout your week. See where Gamliel pops his head, where the sternness of Rabbi Yoshua pops its head, and when there's a place to accept more and more witnessing of this work. Thank you all. I'll just take us out with a little bit of the melody, but feel welcome to peel off as you need to. And again, if you have any reflection or anything you want to share over email, I'm welcoming that. If you want to join me in the melody, you can do that too. Everyone. If you get to see the moon, I think it was full yesterday, so maybe you can witness that. All right. Thank you all.